to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, Shalom. Hag Sameach Shavuot. It's Shavuot. It's Shabbat. And I'm sure there's a name for a Shabbat on Shavuot. But I didn't take the time to check that out, as I should have, but lot to cover here today. Shabbat Shalom to our subscribers. I'm here to report that we're back in the routine and the order of doing the Parashahs, and we just want to welcome you. We're grateful for all of you. And we now have 78 subscribers, and there's one more hanging out there to make it 79, because it always says subscribers. When it says 78 plus, that means there's another one out there somewhere that's got to get, I guess, processed, and I don't know what the term is, but we have 78 plus, and we're so thankful for every one of you and all those that are moved to join with us as you tune into us on YouTube. We're just a small little shul here, which you know, and all those new individuals that come across our YouTube, we fluctuate, and but regardless of how many show up or don't show up, there's quite a handful of people that have been through here, and some that are regulars and some that are irregulars. But they still come. It's just we never know when. So, but we're here to study the Torah, the Parashahs, and there's just one thing that all the years that I've been doing this now, which is probably since 2014, so for me that's about 12 years, and it's changed my life, quite frankly. I can honestly say that, and it bears truth to the expression in Vayikra, which says that the mitzvot, the commandments, digesting the knowledge of who God is and His Word, it sanctifies us. And we need to understand that. Sure, to those of you who are Christians and who believe that, you know, accepting Yeshua as you're sanctified, and that's true, but my experience has been that immersing myself in the Torah has so deepened and so sanctified me in ways that I never thought before. And quite frankly, as I've said in the past, as a 4-year-old boy, I wandered into a Christian church because my grandmother wouldn't take me, said I was too young. But God had other purposes, and it was through my journey of understanding the Christian perspective on things, and now after being drawn into the Torah and a Jewish lifestyle and honoring God's feasts and festivals, not ours, His. They're not Jewish, they're godly. they're a reflection of the character and nature of who Yehovah Yeshua is. And it is in that constant immersing yourself in those feasts and festivals and in the mitzvot that a complete transformation takes place in your whole being that I can't explain. It's kind of like getting a complete remake. I think of what I learned, on the Christian side of things, and I'm not in any way, diminished by that, but I've been on both sides of the track, and I understand the beauty of what God's revealed to the Jewish people, but He's also revealed Himself because of us, and because we preserved the Word of God, the Torah. We've shamarred it, we've guarded it, and preserved it for the nations, so that the Mashiach could come through us and be revealed and lay down His life for our atonement, for our forgiveness and reconciliation with the Father, Yehovah. And the parshas for today are, as I said, I had been out for 2 weeks. I was going to catch up, and we're going to do B'midbar in the desert. And this is after they had been at Mount Sinai, and it was time to move out, to travel. And it gives us a time frame here. It's in the desert, and I'm sure all of you have experienced being in the desert. It's not just a physical, geographic desert. It's a symbolic dryness in your life, an emptiness. Even though you believe in God and Yeshua, we all go through those seasons. And this is the beginning of observing how God works through the various moments and incidences and challenges in our life. That's as we begin here. And the second Parashah, which I needed to catch up on, is what is today, which is Naso, which means take. And I'm going to say this is not a real esoteric, spiritual 2 parshas in a row. I'm sure I could find some. But in just going through this and trying to bring things up to the right order and time, I just kind of went through this, and there's just a lot of practical symbolism here that God is, through the physical realm and physical activities that we have to do in working and all the elements that God designed and created, the shadow of the Mishkan in the heavenlies. God is speaking to us about how we're to not only look at Him, but how we're to order our steps, and how we're to look at how we order our steps and carry out our day-to-day thoughts, ideas, references, attitudes, and care. How we care, not just for our own lives, but for those around us. God is illustrating simply through the order of calling together the men, 20 years and older, to establish who the leaders are. And you can see in chapter 1, verses 4 through most of the chapter, God is establishing an army. He's setting apart the men who he designed to carry out a certain function in his plans and his kingdom. Just as in the heavenlies, he has warrior angels, warrior Malachim, and guardian Malachim, and ministering Malachim on the earth, in the wilderness, as they travel through a very challenging environment. God's preparing a structure by which they can handle what is ahead of them and eventually take over and enter the promised land. So there's a imagery here that God is orderly, that an army in this present world, because of evil that exists, there are those nations and tribes and clans and peoples that rejected the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so they're going to be confronted by them as they travel through the wilderness. And so we see, not only does God have a civil, necessary army to protect the nation, but equally in the physical sense, he also has those who guard the spiritual things, because we are spirit. And those who worship Yehovah will worship him in spirit and in truth. God is a spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh. And we see that the Leviim and the Kohen are there to guard the Mishkan. And in that, we see in this first portion of B'midbar that God's very particular. Now, this is God's environment that he inhabits, right? He lives in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And if you recall, a Parashahs ago, maybe last year, I pointed out the significance of what God is mirroring through Aaron, Aharon, and the Ark, the Holy of Holies. What is God saying? This imagery. As the Holy of Holies is where the presence of God resides. It's a physical edifice, tabernacle, a shadow of God's dwelling place and structure in the heavens, in the spiritual realm. And he wanted to come and dwell with us here on earth. And so he had Moshe, gave him all the blueprints and said, make this house for me. And so what God was saying is, just as I live in the tent of meeting, in the Holy of Holies, the inner part, and I am spirit, those that worship me will worship me in spirit and in truth. So you too have a ohel, a tent, a covering, a fleshly, physical covering in this physical realm. And inside of you dwells the spirit that I breathed into you. And as we see the detail, we should understand that God's just saying, in as much as I care about every detail about the parts in the tabernacle, so too I care about all the parts that I've constructed in you, in your physical body, and in the body of the Moshiach, the reflection of the body of believers in Yehovah. Same thing. God deeply cares. This is not to be boring or so, just filled with, detail and minute things. It's God showing us that He cares about every little detail of our lives and what we're going through. And so I see He's called His angels to guard us, to watch over us. It says that in Tehillim. And we see here where He sets the Levites apart to guard, because they camped round about the Mishkan, to guard it, to keep it, to let there be holiness and cleanliness in light of that. That's the whole function of the Levites, to be holy. Not that the whole nation wasn't to be, but that these were those dedicated to serving and immersing themselves in the presence and the knowledge of God, and to protect the purity and cleanliness and holiness of the tabernacle. And so the religious community, the Levites, just as today it's no different. We have those who have been called and gifted to teach the Torah, to expound on the character and nature of God. And so it's to protect us. And we ought to be mindful of what their purpose is there for. To protect and to preserve the knowledge and the awareness, and lead the way to instruct you in growing and developing in your relationship with Yehovah as it is instructed in the Torah. And so what do we see here? We see Yehovah through Moshe separating Gershon and Merari and Kahat, and teaching them how they're going to respect and honor the elements that make up God's house, His dwelling place. Likewise, so are in our lives, in the shul, in the church, in whatever form of expression where there is spiritual leadership, hopefully you're being taught how to revere, honor, and respect your body. Because it is just as well as the Mishkan is the dwelling place of Yehovah, our Ohel, the tent of meetings, the presence of Yehovah, our Ohel, which is a tent, we're to preserve that and to take care of it in how we eat, how we spend our time, how we interact. So I see this Parashah just illustrating how much Yehovah cares and how important it is to revere his dwelling place. And that we understand, as he has his dwelling place, he's given us a dwelling place. And all throughout the Torah and the scriptures, he teaches us what to eat, what not to eat. Teaches us what to do. And when Sarai appears, what to do. It's an indication that there's an uncleanness there. So, I would like us to, with the simplicity, look at this Parashah as God directing us to value our own bodies and value our tent and care for it like he instructed the Levites in caring for it and packing it up and carrying it and wrapping the elements within the tent of meeting and the Holy of Holies and how it was cared for. It's simple. And so, nothing real like mind revealing here, enlightening. This is what I see going on here. And then we see in the Parashah Naso, take a census. Okay? Working and serving in the tent of meeting. So, the census was taken. Again, orderliness. God wants us to know our resources and our capacity to handle the presence and the holiness of God in our own lives. And so we see, as we go further into Naso, that God addresses, in verse 12, tell the people of Israel, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, that is, if another man goes to bed with her without her husband's knowledge, so that she becomes impure secretly, there is no witness against her, and she was not caught in the act. Then, if a spirit of jealousy comes over him, he is jealous of his wife, and she has become impure. Let me ask you a question. Are we the bride of Yeshua? Have we acted and followed other gods in times throughout our life? Have we basically become impure by following other gods, which God said, I'm a jealous God? What is it? I'm sure you've all been there. God has laid out in the physical realm a process by which that truth can be uncovered if there's been an unfaithful conduct by the bride. And isn't it interesting that it's the man that is driven by jealousy? Isn't it interesting that God said, and I would say the male attributes of him, that he is a jealous God. And at Mount Sinai, he was pretty clear about that. You know, have no other gods before me. He says the same thing to us. Have no other gods before me. You're my bride. Yeshua says that to us. So I just, again, in a practical sense, it makes you unclean, impure, physically and spiritually. Just as if a wife cheats on her husband, she becomes unclean. I find it very interesting that inclination of sensing jealousy or questioning the faithfulness of the wife generally comes from the man. Isn't that interesting? And it is God who is jealous when we entertain other gods. So, and sometimes we're wrong. But it certainly, I think, is part of the condition that we live in. And if anything, it puts us both in check. Both ways. It falls both ways. And then we see where, and I didn't notice this before, again, I want to just say, this is all just simple, practical stuff. I'm not looking for the deep meaning and enlightenment. I'm just saying, as you read through this, God's just practically saying, this is what you do. This is in the natural, physical realm what I expect of you. And so, the other thing I wanted to point out, and that is, this is interesting. I never saw this. Did you know that a woman could take a Nazirite vow? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't. I don't know what I don't know. And every now and then, more often than I realize, there's things I just didn't pick up. I don't know. So, as I was reading this, it says in chapter 6, verse 1, verse 2. Tell the people, Adonai Yehovah said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, when either a man or a woman makes a special kind of vow, the vow of a Nazir, consecrating himself, and in Hebrew, when there's a man, you always use the male gender in the translation because it includes both when it's used that way. So the vow of Nazir, consecrating himself to Yehovah, and so she consecrates herself to Yehovah as well. So ladies, if you ever thought and didn't know, like I didn't realize, you can take a Nazirite vow to show your kind of, I read it as a reassessment of where you're at, your actions, past, present, kind of reconciling with God and asking God, showing God that He is first and foremost in your life. Repenting, humbling yourself, being reconciled and renewed and restored, made holy by honoring the path of the Nazir. And so, then we see at the end of chapter 6 the Aaronic benediction. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah make His face shine on you and show you His favor. May Yehovah lift up His face towards you and give you peace. In this way they are to put my name on the people of Israel so that I will bless them. And we recite the Aaronic benediction every Shabbat here. And it's my responsibility to bless you and place that blessing on you. To those that are here, and I always recite it when I close out the service here. And so, we just see some practical things here throughout these two parshas. And quite honestly, as I am going through, that's about the simplicity of what I have to say on this parsha. It's pretty fundamental. Maybe next year I'll have some very esoteric interpretations or deep enlightenment, but this Shabbat, I don't know, it's just a simple understanding and application. Try to see it as in the concrete realm of what God is asking Israel to do here as they head out on their journey through the wilderness, that there's practical things that God sets in place in order to protect them, in order to protect himself and his holiness, and the shadow of the temple of Jehovah and our temple, and to recognize how valuable you are and your temple is before God. Because ultimately, he wants to dwell in you. He wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to communicate with you and interact. But he's a holy God. And we need to be clean. We need to be washed and follow the directions of how he wants us to groom and care for the tent that he wants to occupy. So, as they say, that's all, folks. It's a simple Shabbat, but it's Shavuot too. So we're going to be listening to Nehemiah Gordon tomorrow, Karaite Jew and a scholar, and we're going to learn some things as he has some interesting viewpoints on Shavuot that God understands. I understand it's revealed to him. I'm looking forward to it. So, to all our subscribers, may the God, Yehovah of Shalom, may he guard your heart, your mind, and your emotions in Messiah Yeshua. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. May he bless you. In Yeshua's name. And so, thank you. If the simplicity of this has been a blessing to you, and you're moved to support us in our efforts here, we appreciate you sending a donation so we can continue what we're doing. We're small. We do have, obligations to meet, and sometimes it gets a little challenging. So, however you're moved, we have PayPal, I think, on my YouTube posting, and QR code, and I made it easy. Somebody told me, make it easy. People don't write checks and mail them in anymore like they used to. So, thank you. Baruch Hashem, and Shavua Tov, Shabbat Shalom. This is Rabbi Moshe from Beit Torah in Schnecksville, Pennsylvania. Shalom.
Hear now, Jacob my servant. Hear now, O Israel. It was I